All right, so hi everyone. I am Priyanka Vergadia. I am obviously today going to talk about conversation AI as the new user experience. And during the talk, we'll see how conversation AI has evolved over time and see some tools, especially from Google, as to how to create conversation AI. Now, a little bit about me. I am a developer advocate at Google, so my job is basically to play with technologies like this and make sure outside people can understand what we are building and how they can use it. I help developers troubleshoot things. I help developers write code. And going into forums like Stack Overflow and stuff to answer questions. And then part of my job is to also do talks like this. So it's kind of a fun job. So today I'm going to be talking about conversation AI, and you can reach me on the internet at Vergadia from pretty much everywhere. It's the common name, so all the code that we are going to be looking at today, you can download it, look at it at GitHub. And blogs that I'm going to be talking about, and Medium and Twitter. So you can reach me, and if you have questions even after this conference as well, you can reach me on Twitter. Okay, so with that, I know we are right out of lunch, so I'm going to try to keep you guys alive and not make sure that you don't sleep. So we'll try to make it as much fun as I can. History of conversation AI. I think conversation AI, just not with that name, but in general, has been around for quite some time. So if you think about it, I think the 1950s or 60s is when the first machine was developed that could recognize about 16 words. Since then, we have made huge progress. I think the next one that came about could recognize, it was, I think, by the students at Carnegie Mellon University in United States, and it could recognize about 1,100 words. So since then, up to now, we've definitely made a lot of improvements and in the technology, and we're going to talk a lot about that. But we've come a long way, and a lot of things since then to now. What we've been doing is companies have been trying to find how they can help their customers, mostly in customer service type scenarios, using voice. The biggest example of that, I think we are all aware of this one, is the interactive voice responses, IVRs. How many of you are aware of IVRs? Great. So for those who are not, because I'm pretty sure the whole room is aware, I'm just going to describe it so we can all go on the same path here. IVRs are the technology when you call into an airline or when you call into a bank, and the automated voice system that comes and asks you about, oh, if you're looking for your balance, press 1, or do this. That is an IVR. Now I think everybody can raise their hands because we have all used them. That is, I would say, around the middle of, and we've all been using it for quite a long time, so all of us can relate to what a conversation AI is in context of IVRs. This, for all of us who have used IVRs, we can all relate to this. I call into a coffee shop, for example, and I ask for, I would like to get coffee with milk. And it responds back saying, oh, would you like a donut with it as well? Right? And I say, a donut would be nice. And it said, in response, what was that again? And I said, I would like to have a donut with coffee. And it said, I could not understand. Could you say that again? And it keeps going on. Why is that? And that leads into, obviously, the picture up there. It is because we keep building these systems with the notion that people are going to respond with yes or a no. It was looking for a yes, I would like donut, or yes, just yes, right? Or if I said sure, it would not know what to do. Like I said, I would like a donut. And if I said a yes with it, maybe it would identify it. We don't know, but that is where the big problem is. We've all been living in this age where over the last few years or so, we have been trying to work with these machines in the flowchart manner. Considering that these are machines, we go with, if somebody says this, then do this. If they say that, do this. If there's anything else, the machine doesn't know what to do because it's programmed to only do certain things based off of the flowcharts that it's fed. Now, that is what we are trying to change with the new technology. But before we get there, I talked about the first example here. Why do conversational experiences actually fail? And I got this list from chatbot.fail, so you guys can look at it, but it's a very nicely compiled list. That's why I've put it in here. We've talked about the first line right there, which is the artificial intelligence is still not accessible. People are still not using it to build conversations. So if you build a chatbot that can only do X, Y, and Z, and it's only expecting yes and no, and if somebody says sure, it would not know what to do, that is because you're not using artificial intelligence in it. And we're obviously going to talk a lot about all of these points in the later part of the presentation, but I wanted to put them up here as one slide. Use cases are not that strong. People are not identifying what is it that should be built in a conversational interface. There are things that you should not be building in conversation because they are probably not going to be effective and efficient, so you should identify that, otherwise the bot is going to fail. Some bots lack transparency. They don't tell you whether I'm talking to a machine or a human being, and that is important because the expectations change when a user knows that I'm talking to a machine. Same way, don't understand context, and we're going to talk a lot about context in the later part of the presentation. Context is the king of a conversation. You and I can talk to each other because I can expect that the 2 seconds ago, whatever I said, you guys retain that, and we can build upon that conversation. If a bot would fail if it cannot store context, if it doesn't know what user was saying 2 seconds ago, then it is likely to fail. They don't communicate with existing business systems, and I cannot stress this enough, and I'm going to talk about this quite a lot later as well, that your conversational experience at the front end, what users are saying and what should put the password in. Okay, what the user is saying, and you've comprehended it properly, but you do not interface with a back-end system that can actually give that information or feed the answer, then all of the front-end work that you've done with the conversation is useless. So you need to make sure that you can talk to your CRMs, you can talk to the backend interface, whatever the system it is that you're using, the database, it needs to have those hooks to make those calls and to receive the result back. Then try to handle a lot of different things. Make sure when you start, this is a big cause of failure. You cannot just take there are a lot of people who come to me and say, we have this IVR that does 20 different things, and we would like to convert it into a conversational interface, a chatbot that can also do text and voice. And I go back and tell them that is a really bad idea. Identify what is it that people are asking most questions about, and what is it that converting to voice makes sense. Identify those 2, 3, start really, really small. Identify those 2, 3 use cases that will actually be successful with voice and chat, and then keep expanding on them. Because if you start with a large number of use cases, just with the example I gave, can we just take all the data I have in my IVR and convert it into a bot? That is a really bad idea. And then they lack proper human escalation process. Any bot, any chatbot, any voice bot is going to fail. It's going to have a time in the user's conversation where either it doesn't handle a certain thing, or if it handles it, the user's not satisfied with the way it handled it. And you are going to have a connection to a human, a way to contact the human, get a live agent on the call or on the chat. It is very important and critical. You cannot just have a bot out there that does not know how to interface with a human being if a user needs help. Again, this is a list in one place. We're going to talk about all of this in at least some way, shape, or form in the parts of the presentation. Conversation is becoming the new AI. And why do I say that? I say that because the number of devices that we are using today, as you can imagine, starting from the smart coffee maker in the morning to the smart TVs and the smart refrigerators, washing machines, those are just in the room, the thermostats, the cars if we go out, everything that we interact with is smart. And as we go on with our lives, even right now, and the number of devices that are coming online is constantly increasing. And we are going to be in a state where it's going to be really hard to just interface with all of them on our smartphones. We are going to have to either talk to them or have them talk back to us. So I'll give you an example. We go into our cars and you're like, okay, Google, take me home, right? While driving, I can't do that with a smart interface, even though it just requires fingers, but still requires my eyes. That's just one example, but some of the other examples that make our lives easier in the morning, when I tell my smart coffee maker, instead of looking, because my eyes are not opening in the morning, right? So I'm like, can you just start making coffee, right? And those types of things, and we are getting used to that type of life. And as we get into that phase, we are going to have to use voice to interface with a large number of our devices, because these devices are increasing, as we all can agree. So that is why conversation is obviously becoming the new UI. Here are some of the numbers from research and studies. 80% of the customer interactions can be resolved by a well-designed bot. Now, well-designed is obviously a very critical word here. If you're not doing it right, you can actually frustrate and deter people. So a crucial point, and we are going to talk about how to make good bots, but that is a huge number and a huge inspiration, I would say, to actually start to think about this. 60% of customers actually want to be self-served. So if we think about that, we can actually reduce the amount of workload that our contact center human beings have, because we can have them do some more critical work which requires a human brain, versus some of the easy things like, can you help me reset my password? That contact center person can actually do some other things while an automated bot can help reset passwords. That's just one example, but those are the types that's where I always say that you should think about those use cases that are easier to be handled with voice, and then keep some of the hard ones to be still handled by either humans or in later phases of the project. 50% of enterprises will spend, now all of the other numbers kind of support this one, 50% enterprises will be spending more money on bots by 2021. And this is all an affirmation that if you're already not thinking about it in terms of conversation, then you should be. Sorry. Use cases of conversations and beyond. Now, we've talked about customer service. I think we all can think about customer service in terms of conversation and experiences like that. So I'm not going to talk much about that. But consider e-commerce and banking. I gave a banking example when you talk to a teller to give you information about your balance, or I want to transfer funds from one account to another, those types of things, easy to do over voice. E-commerce, a lot of retailers that I work with are building personal shoppers. So giving them, and we're going to see an example of that in a demo, where you're giving the user an option to select what they may like to wear or buy, and then give them an option to check out when they have done it, and in a very personalized fashion. So that is coming around. And then controlling IoT devices, we talked a lot about this, home entertainment, auto, all the machines that we use in the house. And then I think the third one is an interesting one where you connect businesses with employees. So think about an HR system where I need to read through the 500 pages of the HR manual to find out how many days I can take off in the year. And that really does not require that much, it should not require that much time and effort on the employee's part to find that information. Versus what you can do is build a bot with that information. You can actually feed that 500-page document and create an automated bot that can respond based on who the user is and whether they are part-time or full-time or contractor. Use that information to authenticate the user and then dip into the knowledge base to give them that information about their vacation and how much time they can take off. Very easy to do and save a clear ROI in terms of saving time. Obviously, with all of this, customers have really high expectation. By customers, I mean the users who are going to be using the applications have high expectations. They're expecting that it's going to be available 24/7. It's going. We all have busy lives. 9 to 5 doesn't work for us. That's why people are wanting to self-serve themselves, and they are looking to have that 24 hours a day. Easy communication, answer simple questions, and not going to go through all of them, but this is again a study done by some sample chatbot report, which I liked. Now we get into what is actually a conversational experience. Like we hear this a lot, and the general definition is anything that you can encompass into the natural language understanding and processing realm is categorized as a conversational AI or conversational experience. Things like voice bots, chatbots, conversational experiences, conversational user interfaces. I would also say IVRs, but some people would debate about that. All of that fall under conversational experiences. And the common denominator for all of this is natural language understanding, which is the technology that powers it. Now, before we move further, natural language understanding, basically, by natural language understanding, what we're saying is, remember the flowcharts that we talked about, we're getting away from those flowcharts, getting away from those rigid, static flows of here's how you need to respond. If the user says this, say that. You're getting away from that. You're trying to understand what the user is saying in the natural language in a more human-like fashion, and then respond in a more human-like fashion. Now, more on how this conversational AI actually work. So think about this. We are in Amsterdam. I speak English. I don't speak Dutch, and you guys speak English, so we can communicate. But a scenario where I speak English and you guys all speak Dutch and don't understand English, we would need a translator to actually translate my English into Dutch, and then if there was a two-way communication, and then Dutch into English, and this translator would act as the critical piece that would convert our languages. Now imagine that translator in this scenario to be natural language understanding. Natural language understanding is nothing but the piece of software that converts human language into computer language and then converts computer language into human language, just like those 00, 1s, 10s, as we can imagine that's how computers speak. So it can basically natural language understanding is the process of converting computer language into human language and vice versa. I've really simplified it. There's more to it, but that's kind of the crux of it. Now, to go a little bit deeper into it, there's natural language understanding, and then there's natural language processing. Now, natural language processing is the bigger umbrella in which you can think about parts of speech, grammars, and how a sentence is created, how machine translates a sentence into the machine language. Natural language understanding is a subset of that, which is more catered towards how chatbots and chat applications and voice applications behave. And examples of that would be we need to understand sentiments when people are saying something in order to give them the right information. We need to understand dialogues and if they have said 3 different things in that conversation, summarizing that, comprehend parts of those things that the user has said. And those inferences and those types of things come under natural language understanding, which is obviously, as you can imagine, very much a part of conversational AI. Natural language processing is more of the holistic view. Now, some of the other terms that you will hear or may hear are automatic speech recognition, which is the technology to convert, to understand that somebody is speaking and then capture that. And then text-to-speech, which is the technology to convert text into speech and then speech into text. Now, the beauty of natural language processing and understanding is that it works for both voice and text. As you can imagine, when you're typing, it's basically understanding the phrases and words and parts of speech and things like that. Same for when you're speaking. So that also makes both of these technologies very powerful for having natural conversations. Okay, so how does all of the natural language processing understanding and all the terms that we learned fit into the whole AI/ML space? Most of you may already know this, but just for the sake of completeness, I'm using this slide. Artificial intelligence is the process of making machines smart and intelligent in a very short form. Machine learning is the process of making a machine learn through a set of data. And then there's one more subset, which is deep learning, which is the process of making machines learn through large amount of data in an automated fashion. Now, where does natural language processing, understanding, and ASR fit in? It kind of fits into all of those 3 buckets. So it's hard to say where exactly it fits in. And the reason for that is you would need machine learning for a large amount of data to figure out what my users are saying, and in some cases you may use deep learning to do that because you have large amount of data and you don't know what to make sense of it, so deep learning is going to try to make sense of it itself. Just so it is clear where it kind of falls in all the 3 realms. Okay, so now we're at a point where we talk about how to actually build a really good conversational experience. What are the points that you need to think about in order to get to a good conversational experience? The first thing that you will hear is intents. Now, depending on the time of the day, and my mood, I can ask for coffee in multiple different ways. And here are some of the examples, right? Oh my gosh, can I get some coffee? Wow, get me some coffee. I would really like some coffee right now. Coffee, that would be amazing, right? This just depends on where I am and what I'm feeling and what my mood is. And that's just me. Now, if we go through all of you guys, we will come up with maybe thousands of ways in which people ask for coffee. And if you combine all of that with the users, you're not just in your app, you're not just going to be you're not just going to have options to order coffee, you're probably going to also have options to order donut or other things, or things that you order with coffee. And that, as you can imagine, would lead into large amount of data, which you would think about feeding into and creating a machine learning model out of which, and then you're going to interface it through your chat application. So again, intents is the way to find out what your users are going to say. And then then it leads into how you're going to use that information to build the chatbot. The second thing that you need is entities. Now, when the user says something, you will extract some pieces of information out of that to take an action on it. Let's take this example. I would like to set an appointment for 4 p.m. tomorrow. Now, I'm setting an appointment, that's my intent. 4 p.m. and tomorrow are the two pieces of information I need to set this appointment on a calendar. Now, 4 p.m. is mostly 4 p.m., but you could probably also say it in a different way, or 16 o'clock or something, which I feel like is the time that is used here. So that's another way of saying it. There could be more ways of saying it across the world. And then tomorrow can be said in a date, and the dates can be said in different formats. So now, just parsing one example leads us into different ways in which those entities can be extracted. So entities are just variables that you need to extract. And now if you think about it, again, you need to take all of those into consideration and create your bot that can understand all of those examples and put them into a time and a date. And we'll see how to do all of this. Context. As I promised, we are on context. I cannot stress this enough. Without context, any conversation or a bot is just not going to survive. Example, I would like to book a flight from LA to Hawaii for less than $300. Give me options, right? And the options show up. And it reads you like maybe 2 options because you don't want to read more than that in a conversation. It's not where someone can see. So, and then I see the options, I'm like, okay, no, doesn't work. And then I respond back saying, how about to San Francisco for the same price, right? Now it needs to still remember that I'm still talking about LA, and I'm just changing the destination to San Francisco instead of Hawaii. And that is just one example, which is a little bit complicated. Easier to understand example. What is the weather like tomorrow in Amsterdam? And it responds back with something. And I say, oh, how about Paris? Because I'm going to be in Paris tomorrow. And so it still needs to remember I'm still talking about weather, but it's just the location that has changed. And that is what context means. So how do you save context? How do you store context? You store context in variables over a period of time, and then you clear those variables out after a certain time or after some interactions. And we'll see some of that in the tool that we are going to see. Now, this is a high-level architecture. It's not really an architecture, but a high-level way to understand how conversational experiences work. Now, your users, and today, the more and more companies I talk to, I hear that we want to provide a really similar and coherent experience across all the different channels that we have. So there could be Facebook Messenger, Twitter, Google Assistant, and if people are calling on the phone, everybody should get the same experience. And that is what you need to incorporate when you're building a bot. It can't just be on one thing. Because the brand and the experience would not be similar, which is not good. So you think about integration, all of these. How are you going to integrate with all these different channels? Detecting those intents that we talked about, applying machine learning on them, and a bunch of this other stuff, which is natural language processing, analysis. How do you, if you expand from one country to another, how are you going to support all those languages that this other country speaks? How do you incorporate those small talks, and how do you finally connect with your backend, which is a very important piece, which is what the fulfillment is. How do you actually take that request and respond with something sensible? All of that, now we're going to look at a tool that actually helps us solve that. I'm going to talk about Dialog Flow, which is Google's conversational AI tool, and we're going to see a demo and example of that. But all the red things that we were looking at is encompassed into this tool, which creates and manages your conversational experience. And The beauty is you are not writing a lot of code except for the code that you write to connect to your backends, in which case you obviously have APIs that your CRM might have, your databases might have that you just connect with. So we're going to look at a little bit of that. The beauty of Dialogflow is once you're building the application, it's available with one-click integration to connect with all of these platforms that I was talking about: Facebook, Twitter, Messenger, phone call, all of that. So you build your conversation once, and you just enable them in all these different places, and I'll show you where. It also supports 20 languages, so you can think about expanding in different countries and be assured that at least you have support for some languages. And it's obviously natural language processing and conversational experiences built into it, so you're not building any models. You're utilizing the models built by Google for natural language processing, so you don't have to worry about it. You just give it a few examples of when I said, here's how I ask for coffee. You just give it like maybe 10, 15 examples, and then it will start to learn on its own. Okay, so that brings me to the demo. This is the retail demo. Let's see. Actually, it's better if I just go into the demo and show you. Escape. All right. So here, I have a personal shopper, and this personal shopper, and look at things like this here. It's giving the user a way to automatically say, okay, yeah, they sell men's and women's clothes. Like, I don't need to, like, you don't just open it up and be like, I can accept any request that you have. This is giving the user a little bit of guidance in terms of what this app does, which is very important when you're building a conversational experience. And this is only a chat application. And I, as a user, now I know, okay, I can still type whatever I want, but at least I know if I'm just looking for men's or women's clothes, in most cases in retail personal shopping, that's what you're looking for anyway. So you click on one, and then it gives you more options. And I say, I pick one of the shirts, and then pick some size. Now once you have something in the cart, it's giving you a checkout option that you might like, or you may want to see more options, and in which case it brings up more options. Now again, the user still has the option to write anything they want and have a conversation, but this sometimes works out better, and I have no idea why this is messed up from the UI perspective, which is why I should have just played the video. But I got really bold here. Anyway, so I'll show you the last piece, which is when you connect to it, when it goes to the checkout. When it goes to the checkout, you can integrate with the third parties, and in this case, I integrated it with Google Pay. So now the user can check out from there. I didn't do it because it was a real integration, and it would have charged me. So I hope that's enlightening, because that is only a chat application. There was no voice in it. And how you play with the visuals along with the conversation is also really important, because here you have the liberty to play with the visuals. The user is going to actually see what is the t-shirt that I want. So that's the liberty that you can take advantage of. The other demo that I want to show, again, I'm just going to go bold. Let's see if it works. Is, now, this again goes to the fact that when you're building a conversation, you need to tell the user what your bot does. In this case, my bot does two things. So I'm telling the user very explicitly, these are the two things I can do. You can ask me other things, and we'll see if I can help or not. Setting appointment and finding landmarks and pictures. I know they are too far apart, but wanted to show two different things. That's why it's in here. So if we say, I would like to set an appointment for 2 p.m. tomorrow. Let's see if it corrects our spelling or not. it did. So it also has spell correct, spell check type things in there. Oh, it did not. What time? Okay, so it did not. So I have to enable it. I'll show you where I do that. I might have not enabled it. So let's say this, right? Now it got that, and then I say I want to come for license. And it takes, so in case of this part, I needed 3 pieces of information to set the appointment. And here are all those 3 pieces of information: the license, the 2 p.m., the tomorrow. I could, as a user, actually I'll just save this for the next part, and it sets an appointment. And I don't have the calendar up, but if we bring it up, it should have set that appointment on my calendar, which is right here. And it is based on PST, so apologize, but it's appearing here. So if I go back into my presentation here, I have an App Engine application. How many of you guys are aware of App Engine? Okay, great. Oh, awesome. App Engine is a platform as a service where you just basically throw your code and let Google handle the provisioning of that application and scaling of that application if the number of users increase for you. So I've basically built the front end on App Engine, hosted it on App Engine. It was built in Django, and then taken that from App Engine. It connects to Dialogflow through API. And I'll show you Dialogflow, so bear with me there. And then it connects to the calendar, Google Calendar. So that is how we're setting up that appointment in Calendar, responding back to the user, saying, okay, your appointment is set. If it was busy at that time, then I have an error in there saying the appointment time is not available. Can you give me another time? That's the one part. Now, if we check the other part, which is loading pictures in there, and let's see if it identifies the Eiffel Tower. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm sending an image to Dialogflow. Dialogflow is passing that image through fulfillment. The backend piece is really important here. It's passing that image through fulfillment to the backend, and the backend is then the Vision API. The Vision API takes that image. I've actually stored it in cloud storage. It takes the image from cloud storage, identifies what is in that image from the landmark perspective, and then responds back with, here's what I found. In this case, it was Eiffel Tower. You could use this in your use cases, like I'm looking for invoices, and I want to OCR on that invoice image and identify what this user's bill look like, and then help them with their bill. So you can think about it in multiple different ways. I just wanted to give examples in terms of what and how these back-end interfaces are important to actually serve or make a better conversational experience possible. Okay, so with that, I'm going to jump into Dialogflow so you can see how this was built. So I am in Dialogflow. This is, in Dialogflow, everything is called an agent. An agent is where you have all those intents, entities, context, all of that set up within it. So in this case, I have this testing agent where I've created a schedule appointment intent. And schedule appointment intent will take the examples. Now again, I'm not coding anything here. I'm not doing any machine learning. The system's doing machine learning. Dialogflow is doing machine learning on it. I just gave it a few examples, and you can see there are only 6 examples in here. Set an appointment for 3 p.m. tomorrow or Monday, 4 p.m., whatever, and it takes those examples into consideration when the user is saying different things. Now, once I have said that, you can see examples here where you don't have the reason for appointment, and some where you have a reason for appointment but you don't have a date or a time. And that is totally fine, because what you can do is when you create your entities, I have a date and time which come as system entities, because everybody needs date, time, numbers, currencies, countries, things like that. So we've created them in the system, in Dialogflow itself, so you can just use them as system variables. The appointment is my specific variable that I needed because my business could have, like a pizza shop would have toppings as a variable, for example. Or a product shop would have different products as examples in their entities. In this case, I wanted appointment type to be either driver's license or registration or anything else. And so I created an entity, which is a custom entity, and I said, if a user says driver's license or registration, then put them into this bucket. And they could say anything that is in this list. You could also say anything that is not in this list, and you could allow automated expansion of this list based on that, which is I don't recommend doing that because then your bot can just take a bunch of different things that are random in nature, and it would be a lot of work on your end to go clean that up. So this is where you can come in to add any of the other things that you want to add in appointment type. Say tomorrow I add one more function why people come to the driver's license and motor vehicle registration offices. You could just come in and add that in the entities. All right, we only have 5 minutes. I'm going to speed this up so you can see most of this. Now, the one thing that I wanted to point out in any intent is the fact that you can make all these variables as required. And what will happen is, and I'll give you an example here, if I just say set an appointment and the user didn't give me any information, let's see what happens. And this is a simulator that I'm using here. So if I say set an appointment, it is going to ask me for all the 3 pieces of information one by one, because I didn't give it any. If I gave it 2 pieces of information, it's going to just ask me for the 3rd one that's left. So in this case, I didn't give it anything, so it's looking for time. If I say 1 p.m., and then it's going to ask me for the other 2 pieces, depending on what date. So I can say June 22. And then now it's registration. Right? So it asked me for all those 3 pieces of information. This is based off of here. You make it required, and then you say if the user doesn't give you this, then ask using this prompt, which is quite helpful because sometimes you could have a user say all the 3 things in one sentence. Sometimes you could just have them say one thing. So you need to handle that in your bot. And the way you do that is through this feature is called slot filling, where whatever you don't have is getting filled with these prompts. So in the interest of time, I'm going to show you fulfillment, which is where the code was written to actually make that connection. And when you have 2 ways to do this. You can create your own webhook without using Google Cloud Functions. I'm using Google Cloud Functions, which is where you don't really have to do much. You just write your code, and it just runs on its own. And here I have the service account calendar ID information to make the connection to my calendar. And the way I do that is here are the 2 pieces of the most important piece of information I need, which is if an intent is identified as schedule appointment, then call this function, which is make appointment. If it's identified as file upload, then call this function, which is apply ML. And then I call those functions and I say make appointment, parse the information that I got from the user, which is the date and the time and the appointment type, and then send it to a calendar event, which is where I am actually setting up the appointment in this calendar event. I'm interfacing with the authentication and calendar ID to actually create that calendar event. Same thing for the ML API as well, where we're sending the picture and having it identify what was in the picture. So this is mainly what I wanted to show from the integrations perspective. This is where you would go in and be like, okay, I want this application to be available on a website, on Facebook Messenger, on all of these other things, on Google Assistant, and all you do is just enable it. In this case, if you want to see how it looks on the web, this is how it looks. You just iframe it into your interface. In my case, in my example, I actually created a front end and used the APIs to to go in. So the possibilities of doing this are a lot, and it depends on how you want to use it. You would create it for yourself just because you want the interface to look very much like your website. So that's why you would build it based on the frameworks that you use for your website. I think we are running out of time. The only last thing that I wanted to mention was how do you actually start with the process? And this is where you start. You first identify those 1 or 2 very specific use cases and for building conversations, like user journeys, and then you build a plan for it. And then you design a persona. How is your bot going to sound? Is it going to sound geeky? Is it going to sound funny? Is it going to sound... It just depends on your brand, how your brand is, and you would make the persona of that bot. So your prompts from when you ask questions are going to depend on this persona. And then you write really good scripts. This is a very important piece because sometimes you just think it's a conversation and we should just start building. No, you should write really good scripts before you start coding and building a conversational experience. So you can see what are the different things that you're missing and make these scripts available to some different people on your team so they can add or remove things from it depending on how different users think. Just like the example I gave about coffee, right? I ask for coffee in different ways, and all you guys can ask for it in multiple different ways. So the more eyes you have on this script, the better your user experience is going to be. And you collect feedback, you reiterate, and then never forget to add a human agent on it. With that, that's it. Again, you can reach me at Vergadia on the internet. I have a series from 100 level on YouTube to which is still ongoing, and I plan on going up to 300, 400 levels. So you can follow me on Deconstructing Chatbots series as well. It's on the YouTube channel. With that, thank you so much. And if you do.